Hey friends, I decided to become a VTuber, so I thought it'd be nice to make a video sharing the process for coming up with the design as well as why I decided to become one. Later in the video, I'll also be sharing 6 useful tips for character design, and you'll be able to apply these no matter where you are in the learning journey, and no matter whether you're drawing a VTuber or just a normal character. And this was definitely a fun personal project for me to do since even though as an illustrator, I've done VTuber and other kinds of design work in the past, I haven't really done many things where it's just for myself and I'm basically my own client. So it was really fun to get to think about what kind of VTuber I wanted to become and design it myself. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Ori, and let's get started. So this whole becoming a VTuber thing actually started from a poll I put out on YouTube and X/Twitter, asking whether people preferred to see me as a VTuber or a FleshTuber, aka real person. Because I like both and I couldn't decide which route to take myself. And the results of the poll actually surprised me. Okay, maybe it's just me, but I expected around a 50-50 split, if not more in favor of real person, since despite the VTuber uprising, I assumed a good chunk of people would still prefer the connection you get from seeing a real human being. But as it turns out, roughly 2/3 of people voted in preference of VTuber on both polls. Of course, the majority of people who voted follow my content, so they're probably much more into the idea of watching a VTuber than the average person. But even then, I genuinely thought it was cool to see how times have changed, even in English-speaking countries, and that some people generally prefer VTubers nowadays. Anyway, having gained the internet's blessing, it was time to start designing the model. At first, the idea was that because I'm an artist, I should become a pen VTuber. Like, literally a pen. And the joke would be that by foregoing all worldly pleasures and doing nothing but draw for years, I eventually became one with the pen. But as soon as I tried putting the idea to paper, I quickly realized why no one is a pen VTuber. Turns out the pen is a very awkward shape to put facial features on. And although I think having the eyes outside of the body like this could work, it would have been awkward to add a mouth to. I also thought it would be nice to have an OC be the mascot for the channel. Kind of like the idea of a kanban musume, which is the Japanese word for a pretty girl who attracts customers to come inside a shop, or in this case, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Since the initial idea was to be a pen, I wanted the mascot to have a casual outfit to fit the at-home setting one usually draws in. So I tried sketching out a couple of ideas and designs, but nothing really landed for me. I felt that I was still missing something, like I hadn't found the right theme to base the design on. Feeling stuck, I put the project aside for a while and decided to work on other things in the meantime. Since over the years, I've learned that while pushing through and brute forcing your way through a block sometimes works, other times it's best to just let the subconscious part of your brain work on the idea a bit while you do other things. It was only about 2 weeks later when I decided to have another go sketching down some ideas that I finally had a breakthrough. Because I realized 2 things. 1, I like isekai fantasy anime. And 2, I often talk about improvement and practice as leveling up and doing training arcs. So combining the two, I thought it would be pretty cool to make the concept related to an adventurer's guild setting and have a vibe where you, the kind viewer that's watching this video, is like an adventurer. The OC could be the guild receptionist, and VTuber Ori could be the resident guild master, and we're all here to level up our art skills and become better together. Now having a clear concept in mind, it was time to have another go at designing the characters, and this time, things went much more smoothly. For the mascot character, I decided to name her Ira, and there were a couple of themes I had in mind for her. She'd be an Arctic wolf, wear something that makes sense for someone working at an adventurers guild, which in this case I opted for a maid-themed outfit. And to maintain a bit of the adventure feel, I also decided to give her an outdoorsy winter boots and added the guild emblem to her apron. Finally, I wanted to keep the design relatively simple and easy to draw, so I tried to keep the number of accessories and patterns to a minimum. As for VTuber Ori, I thought it'd be fun to take inspiration from wholesome magical girl anime like Madoka Magica and be the familiar/mascot character. But instead of turning people into magical girls, I'd turn them into magical artists. Hey, wanna become an artist? It will only cost you your soul. Yeah, I might need to rethink the setting, but anyway, as resident guildmaster, I thought it'd be appropriate to have the guild emblem tattooed on my head, and also wear a bow tie so I'm not completely naked. One framework for design I come back to time and time again is the strange attractor, or the idea of mixing the familiar with the strange. I first heard of this concept from the fantasy author Brandon Sanderson in one of his writing lecture series, who also apparently got it from an essay written by one of the screenwriters of Pirates of the Caribbean. The idea is that when we watch a movie or read a book, what we're actually looking for is a story that feels familiar but strange at the same time. Which is why you hear so often in Hollywood, it's this meet this. So oftentimes what authors do is take a new spin on a familiar idea, or take two familiar ideas and mash them together in a way that doesn't feel like it would make sense, but is interesting. And I thought this was a great concept that also applies to art and character design. Like, we don't actually want to see a design that's 100% strange because we won't be able to relate to it at all. And we also don't want something that's 100% familiar because it's boring. So with this design, I blended the familiar elements of Wolf and Maid and Cat and Demon with each other, sprinkled on a dash of Adventurers Guild flavor, but had this overall strange concept of what seems to be the mascot on top be the actual VTuber and the girl underneath be the mascot. By the way, if you're like me, whenever you're designing a character or painting an illustration, you probably have a bunch of notes, ideas, sketches, and references all over the place. One useful tool you can use to help manage all of that is Millernote, who are kindly sponsoring this video. Millernote is the first tool I found that allows you to have everything you need for a creative project in one place and organize them visually, making it perfect for artists and creators. I generally find it useful for helping organize this VTuber project of mine, since I had a lot of ideas and concepts to take note of, as well as the design sketches too, and I was able to put all of that together in this main board. I could also create these subboards to easily store and lay out all of the different kinds of inspiration and reference images that I had collected for the project. You can simply drag and drop or copy and paste in the images, but what I think makes Millernote really unique is the fact that you can visually make notes on the images itself by creating arrows, adding captions, or outright drawing on top of it, so you don't forget which part of the reference to take note of. One special part of my workflow is that I always have a next actions list for everything I work on. So I used to find myself becoming quickly overwhelmed by all the stuff I'd need to do for a project. And because of that, I'd sometimes just end up procrastinating and watching a video or playing some games instead of actually working on it. And I found out that a big part of that is because when a task is big and vague, like paint an illustration or create a VTuber, it feels very daunting and kind of creates this weird anxiety around doing the project. So a simple solution that I've learned is to have a list where you simply write down the next couple of steps you need to take to make progress. This list should be small and actionable, like get reference for shoes or add details to the hair. And I found that having this really helps to reduce that sense of overwhelm and wanting to procrastinate, because I always know exactly what the small next step I need to do is. So I highly recommend trying it out for yourself and having this list for your projects. And it's nice that Millernote makes doing so easy through the columns feature, and you can put it right next to everything else. Millernote is also available on all devices, and I found it handy to be able to access my references and add notes and images from my phone or tablet when I'm away from the computer. And you can also share your boards in just a click with a client or collaborator, so they can also take a look and even edit with you in real time. So if you find that interesting, you can sign up and start using Millernote for free with no time limit through the link in the description. One thing we need to be careful of, however, is the temptation to start mixing together way too many themes and elements into the design. Imagine if I also added a demon theme, and then a Chunibyo or edgelord theme, and heck, let's also give her an angel halo. What you end up with is a monstrosity called the Moe Chimera, which I believe originated from this meme called the Moetron. And it's basically the idea that even if a theme is appealing by itself, when you add too many together, it results in an abomination, and you have no idea what the character is actually about. So generally, I think a good rule of thumb is to ask yourself whether people will understand what the design is about in just a glance. Another handy tip when designing is to add in asymmetry. Things that are perfectly symmetrical feel very harmonious, but boring, so having points of asymmetry will add interest and variety to the design. For Aira, I added points of asymmetry with her stockings, hairpin, emblem, and tail. Note, however, having too much can make the design feel chaotic and all over the place, so essentially what we want is a balance of unity with variety, and asymmetry is one of the tools we can use to add that variety in. With the design complete, it's now time to draw the model. And one tip I wanted to share here is to always be aware of the overall silhouette of what you're drawing. Silhouette is definitely one of those things where the more I draw, the more I realize just how important it is. I'm sure we've all had moments when we've been able to spot a friend from very far away, like down the street or across the shopping mall, even if we can't see their face clearly because we recognize their overall shape. So the idea is that when we look at something, we first notice the silhouette before the details, and that also forms the first impression a viewer gets when they see our art or the character we draw. This comes into play even more when we post art online, since the image often gets reduced into a tiny thumbnail and the details aren't visible. Furthermore, people scroll through their feed very quickly and will only see the image for a second or so, which is why it's important to make the first impression appealing, and silhouette is one of the tools we can use to do that. When it comes to design in particular, I think shape language plays a big role in crafting the silhouette, since different shapes give different impressions. For example, with Aira, because she is wolf themed, I gave her a spiky-ish silhouette for the hair to create a bit of a feral feel, since spiky shapes feel energetic and offensive, like it jumps at you. Whereas with VTuber Ori, since the idea was to create a cute mascot type character, I focused on maintaining a roundish silhouette overall since round shapes feel cute and soft. There are also general considerations to keep in mind, such as making sure the silhouette is clear and understandable. And in particular, I thought that having the mascot on top made for an interesting and unique silhouette. These concepts also apply to illustration, and a round curled up pose like this also feels cute because of that round silhouette. Other common shape languages I often use include the upright triangle, which has a stable feel to it, the upside down triangle, which has a dynamic feel, and there are also unique silhouettes like the halo around the head for a holy feel. When drawing a front standing pose like for a VTuber model, another thing I recommend is drawing with a symmetrical ruler to speed things up. But be careful not to rely on it too much, since there are things that would look very unnatural if it were all the same, like the wrinkles and folds of clothing and hair. Also, it can be a handy tip to draw using a 3D model as the base. 3D models definitely aren't perfect, and I don't recommend using them just as they are, since it doesn't look that good. For example, I find that things like the neck and the shoulders are too thick, and the proportions of the parts aren't that appealing. But it can still serve as a useful reference for the rough outline of things and help speed things up. However, you definitely want to adjust things when drawing to suit your own taste, and learning anatomy and figure drawing will help you make the right adjustments. Once the model is drawn, all that's left to do is separate out the different parts so they can be rigged and animated. I didn't get this done in time for this video, so I won't be covering it, but you can find instructions on how to do this online, such as on the official Live2D website. And once that's done, I'll be handing the model off to the rigger so they can bring it to life. Anyway, if you made it this far in the video, you're probably interested in drawing and leveling up your skills. And one thing I know I had a lot of trouble with when I was learning how to draw was the fundamentals such as lighting, shading, color palettes, and how to pick colors. So I recently made a tutorial where I go through in detail everything I wish I knew about it when I was just starting out. And although the video focuses on hair as the specific example, the principles can be applied to everything else. That video is here on the left, so do check it out if you're interested. Also, if you're into these anime style art videos, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new ones. This was Ori, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!